Good morning, and welcome to Unfiltered Vision News. Well, good morning, and welcome to Unfiltered Vision News, bringing you the news unfiltered Monday through Friday. And I am your host, Dr. Hashaki Neri Nichols. Thank you so much for just hanging in there with me. Like I said, this cable service I'm on right now, it's very temporary, and it's doing what temporary work does, right? It's okay, not great, but we're gonna get through it, right? We're gonna get through it. So, welcome this morning to Women in Wellness Wednesday. If there is anyone out there that would like to join me on the broadcast this morning, please send me a message either here on YouTube or direct message me on X. And you can also email unfilteredvisionnews@gmail.com. And with that, let's get into some of our, I should say, top some of the topics going on X. So, as some of you may know, we are definitely in political season. And with that, you're going to get a lot of people, running for office, all those good things, right? All of those good things. So, with that, let's get into it. And I wanted to check out Al Green. There's lots of Al Greens out there, right? There was a singer. But this individual, he's been in office for a long time. And I would have to look at his record to see what he's actually done. If anything, he's just known for carrying around a cane and yelling a lot and getting kicked out of different events. Because, yeah, that's happened. I'm not being facetious. He's gotten kicked out of several events, and it's like, you are a sitting individual in the House of Representatives, and you're constantly being kicked out, not because people want to kick you out, because you make yourself a nuisance, especially during the State of the Union addresses. And Trump isn't the only one that he's done this to. He does this to all the Republican presidents whenever he can. But outside of that, he's not getting anything done. He's just emotional, like Like, that's it. Like, I can't tell you anything he's done because I would literally have to look at his record to see if he's gotten anything done. And he's been in Congress at least 2 decades, to my knowledge. So basically, Al Green has lost his primary, so he will lose his seat this November. Well deserved. I'm not going to repeat everything that Nick Sortor is saying, but Green has tried multiple times to impeach Donald Trump and made interrupting his State of the Union address, State of the Union, a regular occurrence. And that's what I was saying. That's just what he does. But here's some feedback from CNN.
A jarring one to see, I think, just in terms of where expectations were. Green won Fort Bend in a landslide in the preliminary, getting crushed by Menifee here in his home base. And again, that's Harris County. And so our decision desk is saying that long-time Democratic incumbent Al Green, he, among other things, if you watch the State of the Union address every year, he's often prominent there for a variety of reasons. But Al Green losing here to Christian Menifee. So one incumbent had to go. Our decision desk says Al Green will be that incumbent. A jarring one to see, I think, just in terms of where
But I'm shocked. And here's what's happening. The tide is turning. And I think, both parties need to be aware, especially those who have been in office over 2 decades. Your time is up. The American people are awake and they are kicking you out of office. Like, there's no longer the resting on your laurels. I should say that. There's nowhere to rest. There is nowhere to rest. People are awake, they're upset, and they've had it. Now, I want to move on to the state of Georgia, where there is an individual running, and it is Keisha Lance Bottoms. So I found a couple of, let's just say, interviews of hers. So I wanted to go to this first one. And this is something that she posted, and she was on, it looks like ABC. Yes, she was on ABC. And she's saying Georgians need a leader who will stand up and deliver for communities across our state. Okay. Keisha Lance Bottoms is the proven leader we need in the midst of uncertainty and chaos coming from Washington. So obviously somebody is posting to her account because this is her. Why would you speak of yourself in like the third person? Yeah. So obviously you're not personal. There's somebody running your social media account. We get it. You're busy. But I'm going to show some of these comments after we see her in this interview.
What about your campaign do you think is resonating with Georgia voters?
Well, Lindsay, we've just been moving across the state, not taking anybody for granted and talking about those things that matter to people most. This conversation of cost of living is a huge conversation, how people can afford housing, access to medical care, or lack of access to medical care, support for small businesses, our veterans, improving literacy rates in the state. These are things that people are talking about. These are their everyday concerns in their communities. And whether we've been in cities or rural communities, our messaging has been consistent on how we want to deliver for people and just push back against the chaos that's coming out of DC.
What about your
Okay. What does DC have to do with Georgia? And this is where I want people to just stop and reflect for a moment, because it's weird. They talk out of both sides of their neck, right? On one side, like some of these sanctuary states are like, DC can't tell us what to do. Okay. And then when DC was like, all right, figure it out on your own, they're like, wait a minute, you need to send us money. Which is it? Which is it? Why are you pushing it back? Why are you saying we're going to all these rural communities and we're talking about these issues and we're going to push back against DC? Huh? None of that makes sense, ma'am. None of it. their talking points and their emotional sticking points that you want to do. So right now, I already know you're running an emotional campaign. You're not running a campaign to really get anything done for Georgians. But let's get to some of these comments because oh my. So NY Strong says, name one single thing she did as mayor to deliver for our community. And he's basically probably referring to the American Negro community. Nothing. She did nothing. I will tell you that right now. It was a big old goose egg. She made sure her friends were paid in office, and we'll get to that later. Now, Phil Holloway says, do you mean like you delivered for Atlanta? Because see, this is what Atlanta looked like when she was mayor, by the way. Yeah. This is where people are at with Keisha Lance Bottoms. She was the lesser of the evils out of probably her primary, which is why she more than likely got the nod from the Democratic Party because they've been waiting to build her up. But yeah, this is what Atlanta looked like when she was the mayor. And I don't want anybody to go, well, it was just a hard time. It was COVID. First of all, everybody was supposed to be at home. How did the city burn down? Let's just talk about that. Weird. Okay. Oh, there's more. You mean this kind of leader? You were mayor of Atlanta when this happened. She was. Billions of dollars in damage. Yeah. This is what Atlanta looked like when she was the mayor. Yeah. Yeah. So, people were giving it to her, giving it to her in the comments.
So it looks like Keisha Lance Bottoms won the Democratic primary for governor of the state of Georgia. If you don't know, Keisha Lance Bottoms was an incompetent mayor of Atlanta as she sat and let it burn when Antifa and Black Lives Matter stormed the streets, burned businesses, attacked law enforcement. And instead of her response being, let's get the criminals, she instead prosecuted law enforcement officers that were sent out there to protect property and the people of Atlanta. And this is the person who Democrats want to win the governor's race in Georgia. Let that sink in. This woman was so bad as a mayor that she was basically pushed out and just disappeared. That's how bad she was. She was so bad that she was pushed out of office. She prosecuted cops for doing their jobs. She patted the criminals on the back. And this is who they want to run the state of Georgia.
And we'll get to that in a moment. But yeah, I just had to show some of that. And during this time, there was an 8-year-old girl that was shot and killed on the 4th of July after at least 2 people in a crowd of armed individuals. Yeah. So this is what happened. So unfortunate. But this happened under her leadership. Now, here's the thing. People really use leadership in a weird way there when they don't want their person that they really like, not to look bad. It's like, well, and you want to make all these excuses. I don't make excuses. Look, and a lot of people will try to make excuses for Donald Trump. Don't make excuses for that man. He's going to be here for 4 years. Do not make excuses for him. Good, bad, right or wrong, as my husband likes to say, you're in charge. You are in charge. And this happened while you were in charge. And you think we want you to run the state? I'm sorry. No, it's a no for me. Okay, now let's get to the debates. Now, this was prior to her obviously getting the nomination for the Democratic Party. But I wanted you guys to see just where she sits on certain issues that are really key issues for a lot of voters, even outside of the state of Georgia. So this is a short clip of her response. And this is Riley Gaines. This is on Riley Gaines' account. It says, if I was governor, I would have vetoed the Riley Gaines Act. This is what Keisha Lance Bottoms' response was to the question. So a Georgia Democrat running for governor, Keisha Lance Bottoms, wants boys to compete with girls. Georgia vote like your daughter's future depends on it, because it does. And she does go through kind of the explanation of her answer. But the bottom line is, young men in women's sports should be a no, because they're boys. They're boys. I don't care if they feel like a girl. You're not a girl. You don't have the equipment to be a female. You don't. But you have the testosterone of a male, which gives you an advantage over females, which is why we have female sports. Because here's the deal. If there really wasn't a difference, why do we have male and female sports to begin with? It's because physically we're not on the same playing field. We're not. That is why we have men and women's sports, girls and boys sports. But let's listen to her response.
To be clear, if that bill did cross your desk as governor, would you have signed it or vetoed it?
I don't support the government making decisions about who should compete in athletics. I believe that decision, should be left to respective athletic associations.
So you would have vetoed it?
Yes.
To be clear, if...
It's interesting because she goes, I don't think the government should be involved in that. Really? It's interesting because Democrats want to be involved in everything else when they're in charge. They want to tell you what to do with everything else in your life, including having young men in women's sports. But see, you want to absolve yourself and basically say that's left up to them. No, it is a government issue because there are actual laws in place to protect young women. Title IX, remember that? Yeah, because it's been abused and completely obliterated by this mind virus. But here we are. Somebody who she supports it because she's not against it. And she said she would have vetoed the bill. So she does support young men in women's sports. And that's it. It's where we are with this individual. Now, here is another video. And now this is basically explaining where she is at on abortion rights.
Be repealed in this state, and it really is a travesty given that we have some of the highest maternal mortality rates in the state, especially as it relates to African American women. We need to have the state restored to Roe standards, where a woman could have the right to choose, and understanding that this is not just about abortion. This is about women who may be experiencing a miscarriage. This is about women who are in need of health care, and doctors are often afraid, healthcare providers are afraid to provide it for fear of prosecution. The heartbeat bill is not in line with who we are as a state and the choices that women have had for over 50 years in this country.
Thank you, Ms. Bottom.
Interesting, because she said that's not aligned with the state, but they overwhelmingly put a Republican governor in Republican House and Senate. So apparently the alignment is people don't want abortions here, and it's still legal here up to 6 weeks. So what are you talking about? Oh, it's because you can't do late-term abortions, and you can't do abortions once you get past that 6 weeks. Because everything that she's talking about, it was actually updated in the bill and was outlined very clearly who could and who could not administer, like the Plan B pill. You can't just get it in the mail. It has to be administered by a doctor. Why? Because if you start bleeding out and you could bleed to death, and you can't just go to a hospital, you have to go to that doctor, because that doctor actually knows what to do if you are in crisis. Yeah, that's what the bill says. You just want to open this up to killing babies. So that's where we're at with you. Don't walk it back. Just say where you're at, because she said she wanted to restore Roe. And by the way, that baby lived. That woman was just used. And people actually wrote policy on a decision that wasn't even made by the Supreme Court. And then when the Supreme Court said, hey, we're going to leave this up to the states to decide, the states have decided. And in a lot of states, you can terminate a pregnancy up until term. Yes, you can. You can do it in New Mexico. There are a few other states out there as well. So let's not say it doesn't exist, it does. Just stand 10 toes down and say who you are. This state does not want that, because if they did, you would have it. Overwhelmingly, they voted to have the heartbeat bill in. Just saying. Just saying. All right, now let's get to our next topic with her, which is immigration.
Atlanta, I closed our city jail to ICE because I could not be assured that we would be complicit in the family separation policy. That was a multi-year, multi-million-dollar contract. On a daily basis, federal, local, and state governments coordinate, as well as law enforcement agencies. But when we are dealing with Donald Trump's ICE in 2026, we certainly have to take a second look at what that collaboration looks like. I am concerned that when we collaborate with ICE, with local law enforcement, that we aren't focusing on removing hardened criminals, violent criminals from the street, but we are focused on people who are going about their everyday lives, hoping to achieve the American dream. We have to be careful, because often immigrant communities are often afraid to even call law enforcement in their time of need. So as long as it's responsible and lawful collaboration, not targeting those who are most vulnerable, I will support it.
Ms. Bottoms, one 30-second follow-up to you before we move on. You talk about responsible and lawful collaboration. Can you specify what that would look like in your view?
Unfortunately, what we've seen, and we don't have to look any further than Minnesota, we have seen ICE go rogue. We've seen ICE come into communities not being thoughtful about how they are detaining people, not being thoughtful about how federal agents, including the calling up of the National Guard into our cities, how it is done that comports with the collaboration that's needed to not only protect our citizens, but also to protect law enforcement. When law enforcement is not coordinating responsibly and lawfully, it puts everyone at risk.
Thank you for your answer.
And she's right. She's not wrong about that. But the problem is law enforcement rolls up to usually the mayor. And the mayor can tell them what to do, because it's happened in Los Angeles. And you've actually had in Los Angeles, Minnesota, and Illinois, they've all repeated the same thing. We have to follow city policy. Now in Illinois, I do respect that chief, because what he said, he was like, our policies say that we can't ask these questions, but we're not going to get in the way of federal agents. That was the problem. In Minnesota, they just stood down completely. It wasn't that they were getting in the way of federal agents. They weren't protecting the federal agents at all from the public. And so what were the federal agents supposed to do? Not defend themselves against people who are personally rogue and should be in prison, by the way, in my opinion. So this is what we're doing. This is somebody who is okay with unaliving babies and open borders. It is who you are. It is who you are. You're also okay with men and women's sports. That's what this translates to. Period. The end. You may not like it, but it is what it is. Now, this last video I do want to play, because she does tout some things about herself that are actually true. So let's hear it from her perspective.
And we were in the midst of one of the biggest economic downturns in history. I balanced 4 years of a budget, left $180 million in the bank. We didn't furlough a single employee. I give that example because it's about what you do when you have to figure it out on your own. I remember sharing with my team, saying to them, God bless the child who's got his own. And what it means right now in Georgia, we've got to figure out how we stand in the gap. With a $15 billion budget surplus, with money being cut from the federal government, from programs from education to our veterans to our CDC that's headquartered right here in Georgia, we have to stand in the gap, fill in those budget deficits where necessary, buckle down until we are past this administration and federal funding comes back into our state.
Okay. What? If we have a surplus, that means we're making money. That's what states are actually supposed to do. States are not supposed to be supported and on the teat of the federal government. The problem is the taxes that people have to pay to support. Okay. And at the state level, people are tired of this tyrannical government taking all of our money and, as we've been painfully finding out, giving it to people who've committed massive fraud every year to the tune in California of over $250 billion. What are you talking about? We have a surplus and we have to stand in the gap. The reason why we have a surplus, man, is because we're doing what we're supposed to be doing as a state. We're not wasting money. We're saving money and we're actually making money as a state. That's how you're supposed to function. You're not supposed to function in a deficit. I'm glad that you left your office with $180 million. Kudos to you. Yay. But on the one hand, to say the government's not doing what they're supposed to do, we're supposed to do that as a state. The CDC is a weird quasi-state federal government agency. It is, because it's here, headquartered in Georgia. So it does get some type of state funding, right? But it also gets governmental funding because it stands in the gap and it works under the HHS, the secretary, okay? But they also make money off of vaccines as well. And they also get government grant funding. So they have nothing to do with us as a state. What are you talking about? It's that stuff, right? For me. Now, what I also want to check out here before we get out of here, yes, it's been Women in Wellness Wednesday, and I have been talking about Keisha Lance Bottoms today because she's running for governor, and we need to know what she's about. We need to know these things. Now, I did ask a question, and I wanted ChatGPT to kind of fact check the video and just everything that she pointed out, and I was like, okay, cool. So, as mayor, she did lead Atlanta through an historic economic crisis without furloughing a single employee. That was her claim. Now, it is true. Multiple sources, including her administration's records and post-mayoral statements, confirmed that during the COVID-19 pandemic, the mayor economic crisis during her tenure, Atlanta avoided layoffs or furloughs for city employees. That provided hazard pay to some frontline workers, sanitation, and delivered balanced budgets without property tax increases. Now, she did do that because, people had to work from home and do different things like that. And she was actually able to balance it. And the city was actually still able to function without going into a deficit, which I was like, okay, thank you. But at the same time, you got to remember during that time, there was a massive amount of money given in COVID so that these cities could function without going under because of the shift in how people were able to work and be in the city and be in offices and all these different things. Now, the claim that she built a $180 million city reserve, right? The verdict is when she left office, Atlanta's reserves reported approximately 180 to 181 million, described as near historic highs and exceeding city charter requirements. This was after navigating the pandemic turndown. Now, in context, in the real, it positions her experience as relevant for governor amid Trump admin cuts federal funding. And here's my thing: stop. This is about you. This is about the state of Georgia. Why aren't you talking about Kemp? Why aren't you making it about the state? We are not against the federal government. That's not our battle. Our battle is making sure the state is solvent. That's the battle. Just get it correct. Now, this is campaign rhetoric and opinion. It's framing her record positively for the 2026 Georgia governor's race. The economic claims are factual, but the implication about the future federal funding cuts is speculative and political. It is. Because, like I said, the CDC has nothing to do with us. They get government funding, they get federal funding. They actually make money off of patents from vaccines that they make. People don't know that. That's what happens with them. That's their big money source because there's billions of dollars in vaccine research and vaccine development and those patents. That's how they're making their money. Okay, so overall, the core factual statements in the reel about her mayoral record on furloughs and reserves hold up. This is standard political promotional video highlighting her achievements, no major inaccuracies found. Okay. And I said, why did she leave her term early? Because a lot of people go back to that. Even like I said, that gentleman that spoke in the video was like, we're going to get to that. She did leave early. The question was why, right? And she left about, so her term was from January 2018 to January 3rd, 2022. So in May of 2021, she announced that she would not seek re-election for a second term. She completed her full term and was succeeded by Andre Dickinson at January 3rd, 2022. So she just didn't run for a second term. And she was, I don't want to say she was kind of like a lame duck in that last 2021 year, but that's kind of how it went. So Biden won the election in 2020. He was the president in 2021. Now, I don't know if it's going to talk about it, but she chose not to run again. She cited the extreme challenges of her term, the COVID pandemic, the 2020 racial justice protests of George Floyd, a major cyber attack on the city during her tenure, rising violent crime, lingering effects of federal corruption investigation from the previous administration. And that was a big one. Like it was still going on way after she left. Even when Andre was in there, it was like, there was a lot going on. But this is why you left. You left because there was pressure. We saw the burning cars. We saw all of these things. But you want to be the governor? It's that part. It's that part. If you couldn't take it, really? Now, what people may not know is she actually went to work with the Biden administration to be on, it's some type of cabinet position. It's a lower level cabinet position, but it's still a position within the White House. But that's what she's been doing. She's been in DC. So I think that's kind of why she has DC on the brain, because she's seen the inner workings of Washington and maybe how it does have some effect on states. But at the same time, ma'am, we are not in a battle with Donald Trump. It's not all about Trump. And you doing that and positioning yourself that way, it makes you weak. It makes you extremely weak because you're not focused on what Georgia needs right now. Now, she has talked about the data centers. I did catch a small clip and she's against them, which I'm grateful for, right? I don't think anybody wants the data centers. That is a bipartisan no, right? And how did we get here? The question becomes, whoever gets the governorship, are you going to stop building these data centers in places where it's going to deplete the resources for individuals, and it's not going to make anybody's lives better except for the people who really need them, like Amazon, like Meta, and like Google? Those are the larger questions that we have. And that is our show for today. So thank you, everybody who joined me this morning. I'm looking forward to coming back tomorrow for our Mighty Men Thursday. And again, it will be open mic. So if you would like to join me here live on the broadcast, you can email unfilteredvisionnews@gmail.com, or you can send me a direct message on X. My handle is It's Our Turn RP. But thank you so much for joining me here on this Women in Wellness Wednesday. And remember, stay well, stay focused, and stay unfiltered. We'll see you in the next one.